I heard my friend calling my name from the woods, and he'd been missing since sunrise.
My name is Jonah. I was 17 when it happened. That summer, my friends and I drove up to Cedar Ridge Campground, the official sites with numbers, picnic tables with rusted bolts, the little board where rangers post trail warnings. We thought it would be a last simple trip before college decisions and broken promises swallowed the week. We pitched 3 tents near the lake. At dusk, we drank cheap beer, told stupid ghost stories, and dared each other to walk the short trail past the sign that read "No camping past this point." Nobody believed the old stories except for Mark. Mark liked those stories the way other people like hot sauce. He chased them. On the second morning, Mark was gone. We searched until our chests burned. We called his name until the sun got tired. Rangers came with radios and dogs. Volunteers traced the trail, combed the ridge, checked the fallen hollows. They found his backpack by an old oak, where the trail forked a boot print leading into the scrub, and then nothing. By noon, the search became a grid, and the grid became a rumor. He'd wandered. He'd slipped. Maybe he'd gone to the river and been swept. They told us how the body would be found, how there would be evidence, but there wasn't any evidence. No blood, no torn clothing, no sign. That first night after he vanished, we sat in the dark like raw meat. The tent walls breathed in the wind and out the wind. You think sleep will rescue you from worry, but at 17, sleep is thin and porous. I woke at some impossible hour. It felt like right after midnight, though I couldn't tell because something called my name, Jonah. At first I thought it was Carl messing with us. I unzipped and laughed at nothing. Then I heard it again, softer, louder, like it was moving through trees instead of air. Jonah. It wasn't Mark's voice the way I knew it. It was him, but layered, like a recording with the edges clipped. Every hair on my arm stood up. I grabbed my headlamp and stepped outside the tent because I had to know if my brain had finally turned traitor. I walked the path toward the lake. The fireflies blinked along the marsh. The world smelled of damp pine and old algae. The sound came again, a clearer call, but not from one place. It was as if someone were walking the tree line, calling my name from different spots, always a little farther, always around a different bend. It followed the trail and traced the river and stopped, then started, then stopped. At one moment it was to my left, by the birch. The next it was on my right, by the old canoe rack. When I ran to the voice, the brush was empty. I thought it was grief doing this to me, my own mind filling in a missing piece. The search teams told us to stay together. 2 of us went out for another sweep. We left the tents with flashlights, moving in clipped patterns like kids playing war. We called his name. We listened for anything that wasn't our breath. It began as a whisper at first. Then it became precise. "Jonah, come help me." The voice sounded exactly like Mark. I stopped. I thought, relief, rescue. I followed the voice into a thicket where the trail barely existed. Brambles tore my jeans. The flashlight beams pinged off leaves and spider silk. The voice kept calling, closer now. Close enough I thought I could reach out and touch him. Close enough I thought this was finally over. When we burst through to a small clearing, there was nothing except a pair of footprints, not our size, circling a stone. They were wet, as if someone had walked out of water. The prints were not marks. They were smaller, narrower, like someone had walked barefoot in the mud. And in the middle of the circle, a wet smear on the stone, a handprint the size of a child. We called out. We shouted until our throats burned. The forest listened and then returned only with the slow, normal sounds of night. That night, the voice called from multiple places until dawn. We made a tally every time we heard Mark. It wasn't the same words. Once, it sang a corner of a song only our group knew. Once it laughed, and that laugh had a tiny echo beneath it, like a second throat laughing quietly. I told myself the rational things: hallucination, exhaustion, that grief was an echo. We stopped moving away from the campsite after that. We waited for the rangers to bring more help. We held the flashlight between us like a cigarette butt, daring the dark not to take it. On the fourth day, we found his pack in the makeshift cave where teenagers sometimes hide. The inside was empty. His phone, stone cold in the damp, had photographs on it. A picture of the lake, a picture of his shoelaces, a blurred selfie at dusk, all taken that morning, time-stamped long after the official search teams said they'd been at the site. The phone had a final audio file. We played it. It was his voice, weak, breathing, and then a whisper under it saying, "Jonah." The last sound on the recording was a soft scraping, like a shoe fingernail on rock, getting farther and farther away. I could have left. The sensible thing was to go home. But I sat at the edge of the firelight and listened until the morning. I listened because I felt responsible. I listened because the voice had my name right. Months later, when people asked me why I didn't go to the police again, I always had the same answer. The other voices started then, not the ones that said my name, the ones that said other things, smaller, more intimate instructions. Bring him the lighter, pressure the cut, tell Carl to stop. They were not always audible to my friends. I would swear I heard a whispered correction in the hum of the refrigerator at home, or in a video on my phone. They weren't always voices. Sometimes they were just impressions of things I should do or not do, and if I didn't do them, an ache would start behind my sternum. Years later, even when I can explain the footprints and the recording in careful ways, I still don't have an explanation for why the voice knew the secret of our group song, or why the final audio file had two breaths layered on top of Mark's. His breath and something thinner, closer, like someone leaning in. Tonight, when the wind moves a certain way, I still hear a faint, distant Jonah. Not always from the woods. Sometimes it comes from a cracked paint can in the garage, a loose vent, a late-night TV where a character says my name in an ad. I wonder if the woods learned a way to keep talking after we left. I wonder if whatever answers you when you call back is a person or a thing learning how to be human enough to get what it needs. If you ever go camping and someone calls your name from the tree line after someone has already gone missing, don't follow it. Don't follow it, because following will teach it to mimic the sound of breath that belongs to you. Don't follow it because sometimes the missing person is a rope tied around a dark, and pulling makes the darkness tighten. I still have the last audio clip. I don't play it much. But sometimes on nights I can't sleep, and the house breathes in with me. I hold the phone quiet, and I let the recording run, and fall back into that clearing with the wet stone and the small prints. And when the whisper says my name underneath his voice, I remember the way my hands shook when I picked up the flashlight and how close I thought I was. When I was 23, I took a solo backpacking trip through the Red Pines Reserve. I wanted the opposite of everything my life had become. The crowded apartment, the night shifts, the noise. I wanted a place where I could hear myself think without the walls answering back. I hiked deep into the reserve, past the official trails, into the parts where the trees grow so tight the sky looks like it's been stitched closed. By the third night, I camped in a wide hollow surrounded by pines, so tall they seemed to lean inward, like they were listening. The first weird thing happened just after sunset. I heard my brother's voice. He said my name the exact way he does when he's annoyed with me, clipped, sharp, like he's about to tell me I forgot something important. But my brother wasn't with me. He wasn't anywhere near me. He was in Chicago, 3 states away. At first I thought it was a memory my brain was replaying, the way familiar voices linger in your thoughts when you're alone. But then I heard it again, a little closer. "Jonah, where are you?" It came from the right side of the camp just past the tree line. I froze. I actually held my breath because I didn't trust what would happen if I made a sound. I whispered, "Luke," because some part of me couldn't accept the impossible. And then, and I will remember this until I die, the voice repeated exactly what I said back to me. Not the words, the sound. It used my tone, my confusion, my breath pattern, like something trying to learn how to speak human. "Luke?" It stretched the vowel wrong, too long, like it was adjusting to a throat that wasn't shaped right. My blood went cold. I stepped back toward my tent and grabbed my flashlight. The beam cut through the branches, but nothing was there. No footsteps, no trail markers disturbed, no sign of life. I tried to sleep after that, but I kept waking up thinking I heard someone pacing around my camp. Not heavy footsteps, soft ones, deliberate, almost mechanical, like something was practicing walking. Around 3 in the morning, I heard the voice again. This time, it wasn't trying to sound like my brother. It was trying to sound like my mother. The tone was wrong, too high and too smooth, but the words were perfect. "Sweetheart, come here." I sat up so fast I slammed my head on the tent roof. I grabbed the zipper but didn't open it. I just listened. Something was circling the tent. Not fast, slow, patient, like it was waiting to see what shape I made inside the fabric. Every few seconds, I saw the shadow break the moonlight. A long, narrow silhouette, taller than any human. Its arms hung low, almost to its knees. When it paused at the entrance, I saw a shape lean forward, like it was smelling the nylon. Then it spoke again, but this time it used my voice. Let me in, not begging, not threatening, just practicing. My heart felt like it was clawing at my ribs. I held the zipper shut with both hands because I thought that if I let go, it would try to slide inside. Then I remembered something. Earlier that day, I'd found deep drag marks in the dirt near the ridge. I thought they were from a fallen log someone had moved, but now I realized they looked like something had been dragging itself on its elbows, its hands carving the dirt. The creature circled twice more, then it stopped moving. For a long time, there was nothing, just the sound of my pulse in my ears. And then right behind my tent I heard leaves crunch under something heavy. Too heavy for a deer, too soft for a bear. Something crawling with weight distributed wrong. I held my breath until my lungs felt like stone. At some point, exhaustion swallowed fear, and I drifted into a broken half-sleep. When the sun finally rose, I crawled out slowly, terrified I'd see something waiting. Nothing was there, except 2 things bothered me. First, there were footprints in the dirt, but not human ones. They were long, almost hand-shaped, 5 fingers. No heel, just the drag of something pulling itself forward. Second, outside my tent, carved perfectly into the soil, were the words, "Let me be you." I didn't pack properly. I didn't eat. I forced myself to hike out, checking every 30 seconds over my shoulder. The forest felt different behind me, like the trees were leaning in, watching, listening. When I finally made it to the ranger station, the ranger asked if I'd heard anything strange in the woods. I told him no, and I don't know why I lied. Maybe I thought saying it out loud would make it real. That night, at home, I lay in bed trying to convince myself I'd imagined everything. The voice, the crawling thing, the words in the dirt. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard it again. Not from the woods, from inside my apartment vent, my own voice whispering, "Jonah, let me be you." I punched the vent closed with a pillow and sat in the hallway until sunrise. That was years ago, but sometimes, when the apartment is quiet and the refrigerator hum changes pitch, I hear it trying a new voice. Someone I know, someone I used to know, sometimes even strangers I walked past earlier in the day, like it's still practicing, still learning, still waiting to sound exactly right. And lately, it's been getting closer.
If you're still listening, you're braver than most. Make sure you subscribe to Broken Shadows. I post new terrifying stories every day, and the next ones are even darker.
I was 29 when I went camping again. I know after everything that happened when I was 17 and 23, you'd think I'd avoid forests entirely. But sometimes you go back to the places that hurt you because you want to prove they don't own you. Or maybe the woods already knew I'd return. Maybe they were waiting. This was a different forest, Black Hollow State Park. Calmer, more open, less aware, or so I thought. I'd been dealing with insomnia for months, and a coworker told me that backcountry camping helped him reset his sleep. So I packed light, hiked in deep, and set up camp in a hollow where the trees grew tall and straight, like a group of witnesses standing in perfect formation. By nightfall, the air felt unusually still. No breeze, no insects, no distant owls, just nothing. Silence is normal in forests. Dead silence is not. Around 10 p.m., I stepped away from my tent to relieve myself by a fallen log. I pointed my flashlight into the trees out of habit, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing between two trees about 40 feet away. Tall, too tall. Its head almost level with the low branch line. It didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't tilt its head, just stood there. At first, I thought it was a person, a hiker, a ranger, someone lost. But the longer I stared, the more I realized I wasn't seeing a person at all. Its outline was wrong, too narrow at the torso, too long in the arms, and yet no details, just a dark shape cut perfectly from the black. My flashlight had a 700 lumen beam. If it were a person, I should have seen fabric, skin, reflection in the eyes. There was nothing, just shape. I whispered, "Hello?" and instantly regretted it. The figure didn't answer. It didn't so much as shift its weight. It remained exactly as it was, arms hanging straight down, shoulders slightly forward like it was leaning in to watch me. I backed toward my tent slowly, keeping the light trained on it. My mind tried to rationalize. A burned tree stump, a trick of shadow, a hiker wearing dark clothing. But at the same time, every primal instinct in my body screamed, no human stands like that. I zipped my tent shut, sat inside, and listened. At first, nothing changed. Silence, just the sound of my breathing, loud and uneven. Then, a twig snapped, not far away, not from the direction I first saw it. Then another, and another. But the pattern wasn't footsteps. It was too random, like something shifting its weight from different angles or teleporting between trees without actually walking. I told myself not to look out the tent window, not to shine the light, not to give it more attention, but fear makes you do the thing you shouldn't. I clicked the lamp off, unzipped the mesh panel an inch, and peered out. It was closer, not 40 feet away anymore, maybe 15, still standing perfectly still between two new trees. And now I understood. It was facing me. How do I know? Because the space where its face would be was darker than the rest of the body, an absence within an absence. My stomach lurched so hard I nearly fell backward. I closed the mesh, sat completely still, and waited for movement. Hours passed. At some point, I realized my flashlight battery had died. I don't remember turning it off. I don't remember falling asleep. But I woke up just after dawn, throat dry, heart pounding. Everything outside the tent looked normal. Just a quiet morning in the woods. But something bothered me immediately. The figure hadn't walked toward me last night. There were no footprints, no broken branches, no physical sign anything had been there. Except one thing. On the tree directly behind my tent, the side facing where I saw the figure, someone had carved a long vertical line into the bark, 6 feet tall, perfectly straight. I stared at it for a long time, trying to convince myself it had always been there. But the wood was fresh, the cut was clean, and next to it, lower on the trunk, a second line carved at the height of my chest, almost like a measurement, like it had compared its height to mine. I packed up camp faster than I ever have. As I hiked out, I kept glancing between the trees, expecting to see that tall, silent shape again. I never did. At least, not in the forest. 2 months later, lying in bed around midnight, I saw a tall shadow stretch across my living room wall from a corner no light was touching. Perfectly still, perfectly vertical, arms too long. And the worst part? It was looking toward my bedroom door, as if trying to remember which tree I had been standing behind. I pulled the covers over my head like a child, and in that moment, I knew the truth. It didn't stay in the forest. It followed the height it measured. By 35, I had stopped trying to make sense of what the woods wanted from me. The voices when I was 17, the mimic when I was 23, the silent figure when I was 29. I kept telling myself those were isolated incidents, different forests, different circumstances, different versions of me. But last year proved something I didn't want to believe. It's the forests that remember, not me, not the places, the forests. I was driving west for work, and I took a long detour through Briarstone National Forest, not to camp, not to hike, just trying to save time. But somewhere along the road, thick fog rolled in so fast it felt like a wall collapsing. Visibility. 0. GPS. Useless. Road lines. Gone. I pulled over near a turnout and waited for the fog to lift. It didn't. Instead, from somewhere deep inside the fog, I heard a whistle. Not a bird call, not wind. A human whistle, the kind rangers use to signal someone on trail. 3 notes. Familiar somehow. I stepped out of my car, carefully. I know, stupid, but something about that sound made me think someone needed help. The fog was thick enough to feel like cloth brushing my face. Every direction looked the same. White sheets folding into more white sheets. Then I saw a beam of light cut through the fog, a flashlight, and a figure walking toward me. A ranger, or at least, a man wearing a ranger uniform, brown jacket, badge, hat, Flashlight, calm posture. He didn't look threatening, didn't look supernatural. He looked relieved to see me. He said, "Bad night to be out here alone." I nodded and told him I'd pulled over when the fog became too thick to drive through. He gestured for me to follow him toward a maintenance hut just a few yards ahead. I couldn't see anything in the fog, but he walked confidently, as if he had a map in his bones. Inside the hut, he started a propane lantern, warm light filling the space. It looked normal tools, a radio, a desk, jackets hung on hooks, but something was off. No dust, everything perfectly arranged, too perfectly. He offered me water from a metal canteen. He didn't drink from it himself. I told him about the fog, about almost losing the road. He nodded, listening intently. Then he said something strange. "You shouldn't have come through Briarstone tonight. It's remembering you." I felt cold, instantly. I didn't tell him anything, not one detail, but he spoke like he knew me. I asked, "What do you mean, remembering me?" He tilted his head, like someone listening to a frequency I couldn't hear, and said, "The tree line tracks the ones it's marked. It doesn't forget your shape." My stomach twisted. I stepped back, close to the exit door. The ranger didn't move, didn't blink, just watched me. Then he said something worse. "You've been measured. You've been heard. You've been followed. It's already here." I froze. Then, from outside the hut, something slammed against the wall hard enough to shake dust from the rafters. Something big, something not standing upright. The ranger didn't react. He simply whispered, "Don't answer if it calls your name." I backed toward the door, reaching for the handle. He took one step toward me, not aggressive, but too close, and said, "If you run now, don't stop until the fog breaks." I didn't wait to hear anything else. I bolted. I sprinted into the fog, hearing wet, dragging steps behind me. Not the ranger's footsteps. Something heavier, broader, scraping the ground. The fog swallowed everything. I couldn't see the road, couldn't see my car, couldn't see the trees, only their shadows bending as something moved between them. Then the voice came. My voice. "Jonah. Wrong way." I spun right and kept running, hands out in front of me to avoid smashing into a tree. My lungs burned, chest tight, legs weak. Then, without warning, the fog thinned. I saw the road. My car, headlights still on, back door slightly open. I jumped in, slammed the door shut, and peeled away, tires screaming across the asphalt. The fog behind me receded like a curtain closing. When I reached the ranger station on the far side of the forest, I ran inside and told them everything. The on-duty ranger stared at me, confused. He said, "There's no fog advisory tonight. There are no maintenance huts on the east side, and no ranger was scheduled anywhere near that area." I described the man, badge, hat, uniform, face, every detail I could remember. The ranger shook his head. "That badge number hasn't existed for 15 years. I felt my mouth go dry. He continued, "And the last ranger to wear it died in Briarstone during a fog rescue. Body was never found." I left the station without speaking another word. Sometimes, late at night, when traffic passes my apartment and the headlights cast long shadows across my living room wall, I swear I can see the outline of a ranger hat. And sometimes, the fog returns, just a little patch of it, right outside my window, like he's checking if I'm still running.
Before you go, if you made it this far into the darkness, it means one thing. You're one of us now. Here in Broken Shadows, we tell real stories, the kind that stay with you long after the screen goes black, and the woods outside your window feel just a little too quiet. So if you want more true scary stories, more forest encounters, more things that should not exist but somehow do, subscribe, join us. I upload new horror stories every night. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Stay safe, stay aware, and whatever you do, don't look behind you.